is a new week. Good morning and welcome to the Dailies here on Echo Television International. I'll be your host for today, and together I'll be doing the show with Lois Taraki. Lois, good morning.
When is Rich, I want to say select for a moment.
Good morning, Lois.
It feels good to be here, you know.
It feels good to be doing the show with you.
Yeah. And I'm hoping we'll have a really good ride.
I hope so. I mean, there's so much on the papers, and looking at some of the stories are not good. We're seeing investors from, Qatar coming in and all of that, and then it feels like good. But then let's wait and see what the economy will hold for us in the future, and then current hardship and the situation.
You know, it keeps lingering, the current hardship, and then, reports coming here and there, the protests that took place and all of that, and then the Qatari stuff with the president. Yeah. But then there are different views about that, and we'll definitely talk about that.
So just so you know, we are live on Facebook and on YouTube, and along the show, when we go on the break later in the show, we'll open the phone lines for you to keep your opinion and then to also drop your comments. And I will be starting with the first paper, which is the leadership newspaper. Now, the big story on the paper says hardship, shun politics, address current hunger, CSOs tells president. Resident loot warehouse in Abuja, police arrest 15 suspects, hunger, cumulative effect of the past. This is a statement coming from Mahi. Customs probe stampede at Rice Distribution Center. And looking forward to when we will get our distribution well, and such won't be happening when there is any palliative going out. You can find details on page 4. We have a fast check. What did Tinubu say about labor protests? And trending residents loot warehouse in Abuja. You can find both details of stories on page 2. At the top of the paper, we have stars converge on Abuja as leadership conference highlights solution to Nigeria's economic crisis. You can start with the details on page 10. Irate youths lynched 2 escort policemen, injured 2 in Edo State. We have Pakistan elects Sheriff PM for second term. You can find details on page 10. Tinubu to Qatar investors report Nigerian bribe takers to me. More details can be found on page 10. Reps ask airlines to refund 4 billion naira COVID-19 fund. More details can be found on page 30. And that's all the news on leadership newspaper.
Well, I just want to talk a little bit on the whole Qatari, the report and all of that. Yeah. I don't feel that should be what the business of the president, because we have the outfit, the EFCC, we have all of those people that should handle those kind of cases. I feel, because I don't know of any country that have actually tackled such, like the president himself talking about corruption cases and all of that. There are people already given that responsibility to take care of corruption. So I don't know.
I mean, Lois, don't you think it's even out of place for the president to already start, speculating that there will be corruption cases and bribe taking and all of that? I mean, it could be in play, but don't be outrightly saying it like that in the first place. And what can you do about it? Like, do you expect, the president or the king or whosoever to call you on the phone and say, someone just asked me for bribe now? Either way, you still have to go back and call AFCC. Either way, you still have to go back and call whoever is in charge. You can't do the investigation yourself or all of that. So yes, it's definitely out of place for the president. That is not your concern. I think after signing this deal, you are to go back and then make sure you stay on your profit, that on your promise that there's going to be return on investment for them. You have to put things in place, because it's one thing telling them that they will get return for their investment, but we also have a reality that there are multinationals living. So how are they going to be sure that they will have a favorable and conducive environment without them living like the rest, like their predecessors or something like that? So the president is in a better position to, you know what, that's not your job. Focus on what you can make
sell
better.
The country to the people, the right
exactly,
people out there, and not talk about corruption. Bribery.
You're spoiling the market.
You're spoiling the market, actually. I know he's trying to do his own bid and all of that, but I don't feel that's the right way to go or the right thing to say to any government.
He overdid it.
Well, now to Blueprint.
Yes.
The big story says rising cost of living consequences of our past, says Shatima. I don't know when our government will stop blaming past governments.
Yeah.
You are supposed to do your own bit. Do what you're supposed to do to see that you correct whatever it is that you have met.
That's how it should be.
That's how it should be. The writer says, assures FG will fix nation's economy the Nigerian ways. Urges responsible protest, says missed opportunities led us to where we are. NEMA orders protection of warehouses. Police confirm looting in Abuja. Tinubu to Qatari investors, reports officials obstructing progress, ask for bribe. And wildlife materials, Niger, deaf women beg willing suitors. From Sokoto, it says gunmen kill PDP treasurer, kidnap couple. And you can find that story on page 6 if you're so interested in that. The story says House of Reps summons Binance CEO over alleged terrorism financing. And the story on the top says police place 50 million naira bounty on 2 notorious terrorists in Katsina. If you're so interested in that story, you can find it on page 6 of the Blueprint newspaper. Kano records measles outbreak, says officials. Is really the heat period, and so we'll definitely have the breakout of measles and all of that. So I feel people around those prone areas should be very cautious and take precautionary measures to be able to. Although measles, there's a vaccine for that.
We also have meningitis. Like we saw that in Katsina, there have been reports here and there of the breakout of meningitis, and these are all heat-related sicknesses. There are vaccines for all of these things, and then usually we keep saying information gap in the health sector is always the problem. I believe that there are certain diseases that we should have moved past in, but it's either there are people who are still bent on the fact that certain things they are not supposed to have access to it, or even when it's being brought to them, they refuse it because they have certain misconceptions when it comes to certain beliefs. Exactly. So there are vaccines for all of these things. The only unfortunate thing is that if you haven't and now you're infected, you just have to treat and then be hopeful you get better. But there is vaccine for meningitis, there is vaccine for measles and all of these things. But then above all, I mean, with the current situation, economic situation in the country, it's really going to sound unfair to tell people to eat better or take vitamins that will boost your immune and all of that. But it's the season, so do whatever it takes for you to like stay healthy.
I think people should really take note of that.
They should.
And we have cooking gas prices rise to 5,139 naira per 5 kg, and then 11,510 naira per 12 kg from January. On sports, Rivers United hit Confederation Cup quarterfinal. And I think the last story here says restore fuel subsidy to curb poverty. Jeep wheels tells federal government.
On Vanguard newspaper, we have how Osoba facilitated my emergence as Alake. This is coming from Oba of Bedebo. You can find details on page 11. Nigeria, Qatar signs agreements on education, solid minerals, and others. Tinubu to Qatar investors report any bribe-seeking cabinet member. Details can be found on page 5 and 31. And on COVID-19 probe, refund or account for 4 billion naira, reps tell airlines. The big story on the paper, federal government fights inflation, mops up 5 trillion naira. The writer under the story says to raise interest rates, reprice fixed income yields, CBN meets foreign investors over FX reforms and NPR hike. Says there will be free entry and exit. Details can be found on page 19. Only implementation of agreement will stop nationwide strike. Coming from NLC, still insisting on what they have signed with the federal government. Misinformation undermining military's fight against terrorism, coming from CDS. Abuja residents break into government warehouse. We have a column on page 16 by La Kemfa, and then a sports column on page 39. Rivers United survives dream FC scare and then qualify for knockout stage. More details inside the paper. And then we have a picture story saying banquet of honor awards in Abuja, where we can see the wife of the Senate president, we can see the secretary to the government of the federation, and then we can see General Yakubu Gowon and others. This happened in Abuja during the weekend at the International Conference Center, and that's all the news on Vanguard newspaper.
Now to this day newspaper. The top story says CBN over subscription of open market bills show of confidence in economy. And we have 42 million SIM cards barred across telecoms networks in 5 days. You can find that story on page 14. I think people should take note of this particular thing.
They should.
Because you won't want to go and queue up in the MTN office and all of that just to get your SIM registered and that. My brother even mentioned yesterday that I think his SIM was, he was given a notice that his SIM was going to be blocked today or something like that, and I was like, you should try and go and do the needful, or try register the NIN again, because it was something about failed NIN and he has done it before.
Exactly.
But then since you still have your NIN number, you should try it over and over again to see if it's going to connect or be registered. I don't know how you do it, but I don't know why it keeps being like that.
I was going to say that the telecoms need to do better regarding helping Nigerians with this whole registration. First of all, the process is not that smooth. I had one SIM, and I think they probably barred it, but because I don't care that much about that SIM, or I don't even want to stress myself, I kept on trying the process over and over and over, and they will tell you, they will send you a text to confirm that it has been successful.
Yes.
And I never got a text from my service provider, Airtel precisely. For MTN, that has been successfully done like since. But then the procedures are not that always easy, and they also have to take some of the fault for this failed linking of this NIN, because a lot of people have tried. It have showed that it was successful in the past, and now you're getting another message that is not, and then you are buying this SIM, and then whether, I mean, they might just put it this way, but eventually they will find an easier way, because they are losing money when you buy these SIMs, and then people cannot make these calls, and then you will be losing money. What about those that have collected your credit, prepaid airtime and all of that? I mean, they will be losing millions eventually, so they will find a way. But I believe that telecoms should make the process a little bit easier than what it is currently.
All right. Now, NACA CPPE raised the alarm over FG's 750% additional levy on expatriate employment. You can find that story on page 6 of this day newspaper. IOC's indigenous producers seek expeditious resolution of all oil assets divestment deals. The writer says OPEC plus members agree to extend voluntary cuts to Q2. The big story here says at executive session with Emir of Qatar, Tinubu woos foreign investors, says Nigeria ready for business. And the writer says urges Qatari investors to report to him any official that impedes progress or ask for gratification. Witnesses signing of 7 bilateral agreements on investment promotion, mining, youth empowerment, sports, tourism, education, and enterprise development. And the last story here says 90th birthday celebration of the Grand Chief Imam of Abeokuta. There's a picture there of the former president of Nigeria, Chief Olusegun Obasanjo, and the LP presidential candidates for, that's Peter Obi. And that's all the stories here on this day newspaper.
On Nigerian Tribune, more reactions trail regulatory actions on BDC operations. You can find details on page 21. Adesina receives Owolowo Leadership Prize Wednesday. Tinubu, Tanzanian President Gowon Ayeku, governors, traditional rulers, others to grace occasion. The big story on the paper, residents loot warehouse in Abuja, steal food items. Vandalized building belongs to FCT Agric Department. Police arrest 15 suspects, recover 26 bags of maize. You can find details on page 2. African Development Bank supports Nigeria with $134 million to cultivate rice, maize, cassava, and soya beans. More details can be found on page 7. Construction materials price hike pushing contractors into financial distress. This is a report coming from Quantity Surveyors. Customs approved 90-day payment window for improperly imported vehicles. We remember in the week past, we are seeing that seaports are being congested with littered vehicles because, I mean, clearance fee was going as high, was 10 times more than what importers for cars were being charged. And we saw that there was just a litter, and then now we're seeing that they're giving a 90-day payment window. I believe that is above just that 90-day payment window, because I've talked about this on Business and Finance severally. And then the challenge for me is not about the 90-day period, because a lot of people will be willing to forfeit. We saw how to clear a Toyota Corolla 2006 model was there about 7 million or there, and then this
how
car,
much did you buy the
exactly
car?
they didn't bring the car for more than 2 million, the price for importing that car. And then to clear it, we saw where Lexus 450 or thereabout was over 20 million to clear just to clear it. And then I'm looking at importers saying, you know what, perhaps you can keep the car. And then this is what we don't want, because whether we like it or not, custom needs to generate revenue with this clearance. And then we saw importers telling the Central Bank of Nigeria to do something about their exchange rate, and then nothing has been done so far. So it's not just about the 90-day period, are you putting modalities for them that will warrant them to be able to come and clear these cars? If not, you're going to see your ports congested, regardless whether there's 90-day period, because in the end, a lot of these importers will not have the money to come and clear it, and they will rather forfeit it, because who will they come and sell a 2026 Toyota Corolla for, let's say, 16 million?
Because definitely when you pay that amount to clear that car, you will have to get back your money.
You have to get back your money.
Who you get to buy that
exactly
at an exorbitant
and all
price?
of a sudden, a 2006 Toyota Corolla model will become a big man's car. If somebody eventually can buy it at that amount, you understand? So it's not reasonable, and I just hope that the Central Bank will do something concerning the exchange rate for importers, and then eventually the customs also will be able to do something.
They should look into it.
It's
really very important.
Yes.
Looking at all of the, it's not fair on the importers. It's not even funny. So it should be looked into.
It should be, yes. Still on Nigerian Tribune, we have Nigeria, Qatar sign agreements on education and investment and others. Nigeria has best returns on investment, a statement from President Tinubu, and then tells Qatari investors to report any official who asks for bribe. More details can be found on page 3, and the picture story showing the meeting with President Tinubu and the Emir of Qatar. And that's all the news on Nigerian Tribune.
Yeah, now to the Guardian newspaper. The big story says Nigeria's terrorism index. Terror attacks decline amidst new recruitments, rise in violent conflicts. You can find that story on page 6. And teachers, endless wait for FG's promises of improved salary and welfare. States should account for money they receive. On telecom, it says telcos may lose 83 billion naira monthly over disconnected telephone lines. And here there's a picture story, and it says hardship, military, paramilitary to distribute food as hoodlums loot warehouses. And this story, you can find it on page 6 of the Guardian newspaper. There you can see people carting away with bags of, I don't know what it is, but a bag of maybe grains or something.
Rice,
and then there are people there on the ground.
Yeah.
And then a house was burnt or scattered, destroyed. And it's quite unfortunate that people in Nigeria really have to go through all of this because of the hardship that is rising every day. You go to the market and you see, it's crazy.
It's crazy.
You see different prices. Like in a day, prices can be changed like twice.
Yes.
And then you keep asking, what is going on? What is happening? And the common man is still not understanding. He's trying to understand the situation in the country.
True.
And it's just quite unfortunate that people have to go through all of these and people's warehouses destroyed and looted. But we are hoping for better days.
I mean, we'll keep saying that we can't sit down and justify and say it's okay for people to result into crime, and we can't say it's good that something like this is happening. But we also have to acknowledge the fact that there's a reason for this kind of behavior. And then if there wasn't that reason, we wouldn't see it in the first place. Now, we've heard the government talking about releasing over 42,000 metric tons of grains, and we are yet to feel the impact of it. Now, this has been on for over 2 weeks now. We are in the 3rd week ever since the federal government said we are releasing these grains. First of all, the idea was to be able to crash the prices of goods in the market, and then now they decided to go for the 40,000 and say it's going to circulate to help just reduce hunger and still targeting the poorest of the poor households in Nigeria. And then the question is, where are these grains? It's a long period of time, enough for these grains to have already circulated the country and to reach the people whom you want to target, and we are yet to see it. And I believe that these hoodlums, these people vandalizing into warehouses, are part of the people that are supposed to be targeted. So it means it haven't gotten to them, and it's taking long. I believe that if you tell us that you are on the issue of hardship in the country, this is one of those things that shouldn't take long. We're not importing these grains from the moon. It's in Nigeria. We are releasing them from the warehouse. We are going to farmers and all of that. Why is it taking long for these grains to reach people? And yet you keep telling us you feel our pain, and your actions are very slow. Whatever way does it.
Okay, if you say you feel our pain, then you should be fast about whatever plan or whatever thing you're rolling out for people to, because you are feeling the pain. If you sleep with hunger for 2 days, I think you should be able to do something about it. There are people that have days they've not eaten.
True.
But what is actually happening that these things have not reached all these people?
For me, Lois, it says 2 things. It's either the government are just nonchalant about what Nigerians are going to, or the second is that they don't have these grains they are promising us. Because if you have it, we should see it. And if you have it and we're not seeing it, then it proves the fact that you are insensitive. And we don't want to feel like that about our government, because we are rooting that you are going to do the best for us as Nigerians. So we'll just wait and see eventually if these grains will meet everybody. And of course, let's stop the vandalism, because in the end, few people will benefit from what more number of people will benefit. So yes,
then we'll have casualties, definitely, because from what is here, you can see that people are maybe, I don't know, dead or probably injured, but they really, it doesn't really look good.
It doesn't.
And seriously, people need to stop the whole crime, and it's not easy. It's easier to say than you know, but I really don't know what they're going through, but I know that people are suffering.
They are, yes.
Well, the next story here says, blame governors for restructuring delay, economic downturn. This news, you can find it on page 5 of the Guardian newspaper. And then banditry, police place 50 million naira bounty on 2 kingpins in Katsina. And the last story on the Guardian newspaper says expert blames social media for mass failure in WAEC others. And you can find this news story on page 8 or 9, it's not so clear, on the Guardian newspaper.
All right, Lois, before we move to other stories on the papers, we will take a short break now. And when we return, be sure that our phone lines will be open for you, and then you can drop your comments on YouTube and on Facebook. And then we want to hear your opinion on all the numerous stories and what is unfolding in Nigeria. And we'll be right back.
Hello viewers, my name is Amaka Ocheke. We anchor the program The Living Room right here on Equa TV International.
You are welcome to watch us every Monday.
The Living Room is a very interesting family program where we discuss everything you want to know about family.
Talk about our children's mental health.
Keep watching. Our program is always here, 5:30 every Monday. We want you to ask questions, we want you to phone in and drop topics that you want us to talk about, even on our media handle on Facebook. We're there. So keep watching, keep listening. The Living Room.
Welcome back. Welcome back, and thank you for not going anywhere. And if you're just joining us, it's the Dailies on Equa Television International, and we have been going through a lot of stories on our papers. We are seeing that we have Qatari investors coming into the country on education and other economic reforms, and the president is assuring them that they will have return for their investment. And we are also seeing hoodlums, storming warehouses in Abuja due to hardship, and many other stories unfolding concerning terrorism, and then also the breakout of measles in Kano. And we're also seeing that meningitis due to the season. We are also having some breakout in Katsina, and these are some of the stories on the paper, and we'll be looking further into other papers and seeing what has been happening in the country. I am Rachel Tanze, and Lois is still with me on the show.
Yes, I'm still here.
Thank you, Lois. All right, so we'll be moving on to the Punch newspaper. The big story on the paper says tight security at Nema stores as hoodlums loot FCT warehouse. This is on food crisis. Troops foil attack on Abuja warehouse, arrest 5 hoodlums, cart away rice and others. Policemen deployed in Bayelsa, Kaduna, Delta, Oshun warehouses. Reforms not meant to inflict hardship, a statement coming from Vice President Shetima. However, the intention was it is doing the opposite. You can find details on page 2. Report Nigerian officials demanding bribes Tinubu tells Qatari investors. Details can be found on page 19. Reps ask airlines to refund 4 billion naira COVID-19 funds. Senate summons CBN officials over 30 trillion naira loans. This is including the Ways and Means and then Anchor Borrowers loan. You can find details on page 41. Economists ask Obasanjo, Adedoyin, Adeojo envoys grace Punch 50th anniversary dinner. Tampolo canvasses more crude output, NAF destroys illegal refineries. You can find details on page 42. Driver in custody for killing 10-year-old with vehicle. You can find details on page 15. SIM NIN linkage block lines rise to 40 million. You can find details on page 41, and that's all the news on the Punch newspaper.
Now moving to the Daily Times, the big story here says why Igbo won't protest against Tinubu by Umahi. You can find the story if you're so interested in it on page 2. Summit projects rapid growth in gas sector, reduction in domestic prices. And hungry residents loot Abuja warehouse, vandalize facility. Why EEL may be counterproductive, says expert. You can find that story on page 4 of the Daily Times newspaper. In Qatar, Tinubu promises investment-friendly Nigeria, vows to combat graft. If you're interested in more details about the story, you can find it on page 4. NDLEA naps Vietnam-bound businessman with cocaine at Abuja airport. And you can find more on the story on page 2 of the Daily Times newspaper. And the last story says Reps Committee asks private airlines to refund 4 billion naira COVID-19 funds. And that's all the stories on the Daily Times newspaper.
On New Telegraph newspaper, bank contribution to AMCON sinking fund hit 416.99 billion naira. This is a report from the Central Bank of Nigeria. You can start with details on the front page. Nigeria's purchasing managers index drops to 51.0 on inflation. More details can be found on page 22. And we have a report from Oronsaye. Lawyers split over proposed EFCC ICPC merger. Oyo local government poll, APC threatens to withdraw candidate if beavers isn't used. Diesel prices hit 1,750 naira to a liter in Abuja, and then in Lagos State is at 1,710 naira. Southwest has no reason to protest against federal government, says Mahi. Details can be found on page 2. The big story, hardship. Residents break into FCTA-owned agri warehouse. Cart away foodstuff, doors, windows, machinery for wet season farming. Police arrest 15 suspects. Incident signal looming mass uprising. This is coming from PRP. And we have African Development Bank helps Nigeria with $134 million to cultivate rice and others. Details can be found on page 2, 5, 25, and 28. Federal government grants 90-day extension to regularize duty on imported vehicles. Acres of restructuring as Nigerians await Tinubu's campaign promise fulfillment. And we have the Lagos State government issue for the ultimatum to squatters on Lekki Coastal Road. You can find details on page 7. And I believe that the Lagos State government should also look into better housing plans. Still on the New Telegraph newspaper, reps other private airlines. Refund 4 billion naira COVID-19 funds to federal government within 1 week, or we saw on other papers saying, or you should bring an account of what you did with that money. You can find details on page 3. Tinubu to Qatari investors, returns on investment highest in Nigeria. And then at the downside of the paper, we have a study that says tattoos can lead to organ damage. Yes, a lot of studies have been linked to the dangers of having a tattoo. You can find details on page 27, and that's all the news on New Telegraph newspaper.
Now on the Metrics newspaper, from the top you get Nigeria seals comprehensive sectoral deals with Qatar. And the writer says, report bribe seekers to me. Tinubu tells Qatari investors. Food aspires cities come back to claim Manchester Derby victory over United. And this is a sports story, and you can find it on page 16 of the Metrics newspaper. For failing to probe missing $3.4 billion IMF loan, Serap sues President Tinubu. And the writer says servicing IMF loan that is missing, diverted, or unaccounted for is double jeopardy for Nigerians, allegedly, says Sarah. And the big story here says, outrage trails Tinubu's expatriate employment levy. The writer says, if implemented, it will frustrate FG's ongoing fiscal, monetary reforms, disincentivize FDI, NECA, coming from NECA, and says, FG cannot impose tax or levy without appropriate legislation. It must be backed by an act of the National Assembly. An expert says timeline for compliance too short, wants at least 6 months notice to comply. You can find details of the story on page 2 of the Metrics newspaper. Economic hardship, looted warehouse by hoodlums did not belong to us, NEMA clarifies. 2 policemen lynched by angry mob for crushing 3 to death in Edo. You can find details of the story on page 11. And despite AFCFTA, African countries trade more nations outside continent. This is coming from ECA report. And Nollywood tragic deaths, Tinubu, Atiku, Obi-Mon, Mr. Ibu, and Sisi Quadri. You can find the story, details of it on page 15 of the Metrics newspaper. It's quite unfortunate that we see more stories of these Nollywood, not just Nollywood actors or actors. You see some of the, from the entertainment industry, you see them dying. And most of them are actually male. I don't know if there's something in particular. Yesterday I was conversing with somebody and then she brought that to my note. I was like, it's actually true because we've have a number of them, the male from the male counterpart from the entertainment industry, and then it's beginning to, you know, you raise a brow and ask what is actually happening. We know that some of them have had health issues and all of that, but then it's quite unfortunate because these people have given their quota in the entertainment industry to make us laugh at one point or the other. But then it's quite sad, and we commemorate with the families, and then
and they're usually at that prime. They have many more years to go, and just as you said, they've contributed a lot to the industry. We can talk about Mr. Ibu. These are people who started when Nollywood didn't have that much, and now that the industry is getting better, and we still need them because they have been unique and nobody can say their contribution haven't been felt over decades. And then now to see them gone, and then for me, I just always want to emphasize on their health, because it's usually one health challenge, and then we see them at the position of soliciting for funds and all of that. And I would like to say that, you know what, our entertainment industry needs restructuring. It is a billion-dollar industry. I don't even want to say naira, because I want to see it going above and beyond Nigeria. And it has. And there's more potential. Why I'm saying it needs restructuring, because most of the time, if you look at the many movies that some of these stars have been featured in, exactly, and it will be hard for you to believe that when they fall sick, they are soliciting for funds.
You know, the lady actually mentioned that, because I've seen some of them on social media soliciting for funds, and then she was like, is it that they don't have money? Exactly. But you see them buying expensive cars to keep up, to keep up with the trend of things,
with their lifestyle and all of that
in that industry. But then, why is it that they come out? Is it that they've already, over time, because of the health issues, they've spent the money they have on their health, and then
I believe
at the end
that
of the day, they come out to say
could be done about it. Like, just that everybody has a job. These are professionals in entertainment. Just that everybody have a job, have insurance, health insurance, have this and that covered. They should also. It means that there is some kind of sensitization that needs to be done for people in the entertainment industry, that while you're being carried away, keeping up with your lifestyle demand, buying expensive clothes, houses, just to keep up with red carpets and all of that. You also need to look at your health. You need to ensure certain things in your life and all of that. And above all, they should live a healthy lifestyle, because a lot of time you see it's one sickness after another. They should want to live healthy. I'm not saying those that died is because they did not try to live a healthy life, but I'm just saying that they should be more aware of that, because the industry needs them. We don't want to be seeing potentials just going just like that. So there's just so much that needs to be done.
And this is not just for the people in the entertainment industry. It goes out to every other person out there. You need to take your health very seriously, because right now you don't even want to get sick.
You don't want to get sick.
Do you want to eat, or you want to buy drugs and
the drugs are
medication?
There are
drugs
no
are really
doctors
expensive,
and all of that.
and all of that. So it's just a call for everyone out there to really see that we take our health seriously. It's really important. It's really important. Now to other stories. Embattled Emefiele evacuates Central Bank of Nigeria governor's quarters. And the last story here is not the last story. Another story says FG approves 90-day grace for payment of duty on improperly imported vehicles. And the last story here says despite AFCFTA, African countries trade more with nations outside the continent. And this report is coming from ECA, and that's all the story on the Metrics newspaper.
On First News newspaper, military forcibly took away suspected oil bunkers from police custody, IGP tells court. Current constitution cannot resolve Nigeria's economic challenges. This is coming from IOKU. You can find details inside the paper. Protests against hardship in a responsible manner, Shetima tells Nigerians. Police to arraign 19 Bureau change operators for alleged money laundering. Mobs killed 2 policemen, injured 2 others in Edo. The big story on the paper, former minister tackles Tinubu over statement on bribe-seeking officials, accuses president of continuing Buhari's demarketing of Nigeria. I mean, we've said that. As president says Nigerian youth are reliable, signs multi-sectoral investment agreement with Qatar. And on economic sabotage, I'm determined to eradicate oil theft in Niger Delta, coming from Tom Polo, conferred with NUJ Meritorious Award. And on looting, NEMA tightens security nationwide, denies attack on Abuja warehouse as FCTA confirms looting of warehouse in Abuja. 2020 audit report, we have OAUGF asks Labour Ministry to account for 3.106 billion naira. At the downside of the paper, we have Meshai, that's tea vendors lament low patronage over high price. Of course, I mean, until you go there and then you ask for Indomie with egg, or you ask for bread and egg, and then when you see your bill at the end of the day, of course,
you'll be shocked that it's Meshai.
Exactly. You just have to, wouldn't this do better for me at home than coming here for a quick fix,
you know,
and all of that?
So before now, people prefer to, instead of just making the tea or so, let me just go to Meshai.
Yeah,
because one cup of tea is like,
it has always been an affordable place.
Yes, but now that it has gotten to this, I don't know what's the common.
I don't know what the common man would do.
Yeah, it's quite unfortunate that Meshai is becoming inaccessible for the common man.
True, it's really sad. And that's all the news on First News newspaper.
Now to Nigerian News Direct newspaper. From the top, we have Main One lands first submarine cable outside Lagos in Akwa Ibom State. Family announces funeral arrangements for late Wigwe. You can find that story, details of it on page 4. Illegal arms, FG recovers 80,000 ammunitions. Seplat Energy's gross profit rises to 349.3 billion naira. The big story here says, join us or we meet in 2027. Tinubu tells Labour. The rider says commissions Lagos Red Line Rail project, insists Nigeria will be out of economic problems, and Red Line Rail to transport 750,000 passengers daily. If you're so interested in the story, you can find it on page 4 of the Nigerian News Direct newspaper. I find this this particular story somehow. They'll join us or we meet in 2027. Like that was something Tinubu told Labour. And I know last week they went on the strike, but I don't think it lasted.
No.
For the 2 days that he said he was going to, and then I think over time Labour has become, I don't want to
like
use this
puppets
word.
in the hand of the federal
this word,
government.
see finish.
Exactly.
I think that's just it, because I can't even imagine that the Labour I knew like the past years have become a caricature of itself or something like that. Sorry to use that word, but it's not standing on demand. They are not, because I remember the first time during Goodluck's regime that subsidy was removed. I will always say that, because I remember what happened. There was a total lockdown of this country. Yes. And then we are having a more severe atmosphere situation, and then
Labour are just toying around.
Is it that they will plan on strike and then TUC will be out of it, or they are one leg in one? The trend is becoming...
Or they are threatening us to go on strike because Joe was being attacked or mobbed by police.
I mean, they took that one very seriously.
They took that one
but it's quite unfortunate that he had to go through that. I'll keep saying that it was unfortunate for him to go through all of that, because nobody should be subjected to that kind of inhumane treatment. And then for the fact that we had the people that were supposed to protect him do that to him, it was unfortunate. It was an unfortunate incident. But then, I don't know, I think Labour has to do more. It's, as far as I'm concerned, they are not, I don't know what they are doing behind the scenes, but what we are seeing is really not what we are expecting and what we know Labour for.
They are supposed to be the one threatening the president and then the president bowing to them, not
but
the
here
other
we
way.
see
Exactly.
Join us
or we meeting. I mean, it shows you to what level they are being looked at the moment. And just as you said, we once had a Labour that when they sneeze, the country stands still. Talk more of if they decide to cough or something like that. And then we are having a current administration of Labour that it's joking with everything. We keep saying it that, strike is not the way forward. But when you go on a strike, you are putting the ball in the federal government's court. And they determine whether it's a 2-hour strike or it's a 5-second strike. When you go on that strike, you're telling them that if you act, we are calling it off immediately. It's your action for them to act, because you have spoken and they are not listening. But they cannot be blind to an action, because even if they refuse to hear, they can see. And that is where I keep saying Labour is not trying, because we are waiting for an action that will make the federal government to react, and they have refused to whatsoever do the needful. And that is why we are seeing such coming from the president to Labour. It's sad.
Well, to the next story, residents block Kaduna-Abuja highway, protest incessant kidnappings. NNPC Limited advocates for war room with operators to tackle production challenges. These are all the stories you can find on the Nigerian News Direct newspaper.
And Lois, this is how far we can go on the show today. Thank you for doing this with me.
Thank you for having me.
And to our viewer, thank you for keeping a date with us today on the Daily. See you next time. Goodbye.